All right, so Amazon Game Studios has announced that Lord of the Rings Online, their brand new MMORPG, has been back in development with a deal signed with Embracer Group. The team behind it is the team that's actually behind New World and going to be using what they call what I'm calling the Azoth 2.0 engine to bring this game to life, set in that persistence open world. The work's already been going on it. They've been using obviously New World as a core testing bed, a good way of getting good data. And that is essentially kind of the news that they're excited to announce. Further, kind of leaning into that Amazon just isn't going to be a publisher to everybody else's MMORPG dream out there, but that they are still driving forward and building out this game. So I thought I'd break the news to you, see what you guys think, and get some let's get some love in chat, guys. So if you're here with us live, be sure to hit that like button. Subscribe, share, so much more. I can't wait to see Chris's non-hyped reaction to all kinds of things that have me just tickled to freaking death, baby.
How do I go back in time and give Embracer Group my money to invest?
Yeah. It feels like Embracer Group
seem to be able to go basically to the investor equivalent of garage sales and buy up IP deals and dust them off and then sell them to like some antique roadshow for like, they're involved in everything. Their market cap now is like 7 billion.
They own so much IP and they keep becoming closer and closer and closer with Amazon. Amazon has through them, Crystal Dynamics, the Tomb Raider, the Lord of the Rings. They had the license. That deal, they originally were working on a Lord of the Rings game in conjunction with, I believe, Tencent, or it might have been one of the other Chinese companies, but something got acquired and then that got stopped. But now through Embracer, they're doing this. They're bringing it fully in-house to the Orange County team. And I see chat and there's going to be a concern. The narrative you'll see is people will be like, oh no, what does this mean for New World? Or, oh no, like, can they really do this? Like, this is Amazon. We've continued to break and tell you, like, we've continued to break news for you guys. I broke a lot of news last week, which got me a lot of DMs, which was really kind of entertaining. But at the same time, this is also Amazon saying and continuing to say, we are all in on games. Like, Amazon isn't acting like EA. They aren't acting like Google. They are a driving force. And New World will specifically benefit for this, being they're evolving the engine and the things that they're learning and the things that they're doing. It's like what we dreamed that Yoshi P would do with Final Fantasy 11 and Final Fantasy 14. Like, bring it in-house, bring it within this engine so that the team that's working on improving the network bandwidth over here or this rendering engine over here, all of a sudden you see all the games are able to benefit from utilizing shared resources, as opposed to like necessarily thinking like you've got, two different engines, two different teams. And they are also still working on a third MMO that's actually, I think, in Unreal Engine 5. So it's like these things are all still moving forward all in and of themselves. And I think that with the Lord of the Rings IP as a part of, like, when you talk about nostalgia, the thing I said that New World's going to struggle with for the longest time is there's no New World that you could go play. There's no, like, I've been playing New World games since I was on the NES. That doesn't exist. Lord of the Rings is completely the opposite. And based off of what they've been able to do with New World, specifically what they've been able to do with New World, it's the advertising for AWS, AGS. It is even if it loses money, like, it's still bringing in so much for their ability to step forward and do these different things. And I was just like, yep. When I saw the announcement today, I was like, that checks out. And I wonder what we're going to get from them here in June when we step into Summer Games Fest. What do you think?
Their relationship with the Lord of the Rings IP is becoming something where I think they're looking at companies like Disney and they're starting to say, what would happen if you owned all of the sources of water? Right? Like you look at a lake and you're like, well, I mean, the lake is a shared resource. Like, it's filled by like these 10 rivers, and like, that's just this unfathomable amount. And like, Disney's like, we own all 10 of our rivers. So like, when you look at Amazon going like, somebody could just own Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah. Like that can be networked through enough deals and enough buying power that, like, when you have Twitch drops for your Lord of the Rings MMO, when a Ring of Power season drops, and then somehow you secure the rights to like bring all the Lord of the Rings movies back to like the front of Amazon Prime or whatever, and like they become like, there's this world where like that benefits them. And that's assuming that like Ring of Power moves into being an IP, an aspect of the IP that people universally like. Like right now, it's obviously a really split topic where there's a lot of people already frustrated with Ring of Power. But like if we just look at the raw buying power of it, which is what we're talking about here, because we don't know if this MMO is going to be good or not. Like the Lord of the Rings has not been a guaranteed home run for a video game. As an IP goes, it's an incredibly robust IP.
They've had some games that I've just adored, and then based off, and that's also, I would say, my experience has been EA in that regards. Like EA's been the factor of like, oh, this Lord of the Rings game was great. EA gets the next one. Then you're like, oh, that wasn't so good. But anyway, go ahead.
So I think that's the takeaway here. Beyond that, like we don't know anything. Like all the Ashes of Creation people have already decided whether or not this is a good game based on literally nothing. But so like that's why I don't get like super hyped about, like we don't know combat system. We don't even know like what release decade they're targeting. Like we don't, like it could be 2030. Right. Like it doesn't matter.
This will hopefully not be another Ashes of Creation moment. But what we do know is that within the team that they've been continuing to grow, the New World team, like they are going to, like the things and features that they bring into New World will immensely benefit Lord of the Rings and vice versa. And ideally, Lord of the Rings gets to launch with 4 or 5 years of like really tried and true lessons learned about what it means to be a fully open world, seamless MMORPG with massive siege battles. Like when you start thinking of like some of these systems that are in place, like this could end up being, at least from a, a proving grounds. Imagine, like an MMORPG launching in year 5, where it's like, oh, how do you do that? Well, we built this other MMO. And then what we did was we were like, okay, like let's build another MMO. Let's take this as our base, and now let's build on top of it. So you're not essentially starting from scratch, and you're not essentially starting from a visual scratch, because you could sit here and say like, okay, yeah, we're going to visually have this element, and you can kind of see that style being something that would really and fundamentally differentiate it. And then also on top of that, I would say this probably is going to confirm action-based combat based off of how New World is set up, where it has that. Now, this will give them maybe the opportunity to say, well, what does that look like if it was set in Lord of the Rings? And I see Cosmos also sounding off, if 16 does well, maybe Square Enix uses that world for a template. And I think that would be genius. One of the things that I've often wished they would do is explore Ivalice more, and they've been doing that within 14. And so this, for me, I think is nothing but good news. Clearly, we have to wait until you go hands-on. This isn't me writing a review going, well, they knocked it out of the park with the Lord of the Rings MMORPG, but at least in terms of the team and the passion that they continue to put on display, and the budget that Amazon brings to these projects, and the marketing, and we start talking about Twitch drops, you start talking and looking forward, down the road, like this in and of itself is an important factor. And the biggest news of all is that it's in-house, because a lot of speculation has been that Amazon's just going to become a publisher, and that's not, and people seemed okay with that. And it'll be interesting to see how people feel once we start seeing more
as a publisher so far. So like, I don't have any reason to be like, them being a publisher is already plenty good news. I think there's a lot of games out there that really struggle with the publishing aspect out there. Like that's a separate hard part. So like if you can just guarantee constant cash flow, and depending on how that relationship works, like if they can handle the server aspect, like that's been something that a lot of big game launches have really struggled with. What happens when you have 1 million concurrents on day 1 and 5,000 concurrents on day 90? Like how do you have exactly the right amount of server space for that? And like that's like most of the people who have solved it well, they're doing it with AWS. So for AWS to be the official partner kind of guarantees you that premier access to that. So like they've handled all of that very well. They've handled the money side of it very reasonably. I've not felt over monetized at any point in a lot of these Amazon published games. As far as like, just in general, I feel like communication's been very fair. I feel that like I just don't have that much negative to say. And most of it's pretty quiet. Like I just don't have anything negative to say. It's not good because I can think of all the things that Amazon does well as a publisher. It's good because I can't think of any of the bad things. That's really what I want from my publisher. Like I just want you to let the devs be on display. Let's talk about all what's going on in game, and let's get away from all the negative business side. It's really frustrating when you have a good IP that seems to have people who want you to enjoy the game behind it, and we're too busy talking about all these things that are not gameplay. We're too busy talking about all these things that are wildly problematic because of reasons other than when we're sitting there, getting loot and seeing cool stuff.
So we got chat basically saying, what does it mean for New World? So what, Chris, like based off of what I've shared with you, what do you think the future of New World looks like in terms of this announcement, just on the announcement alone? We don't have a game to play yet. It's not like, hey guys, got to delete New World to get early access to Lord of the Rings. What do you think?
No, I think they're two different games. Like if I was thinking of a Lord of the Rings MMO in modern for today that was successful, already I have a question of like what age are they going with, because it is like where are they going to set this? But it's set in a world that's substantially larger than New World. New World's world is not very big. It's why I disagree with them putting mounts in the game, because once they add them, they can't take them out. And I think that the world has enough interest in it, in the way that you move and navigate it, that adding mounts, I believe, is a mistake. But something like, Lord of the Rings is a big enough space that travel is different from the very get-go. New World is centered on these like player versus player interactions. But Lord of the Rings is very much, there's these factions and there's this territorial control and, like if the orcs are pushing and things like that. So I have bigger questions about like, what is the NPC relationships with territory? And so like, if we assume that New World is at all a template, like the idea that there would be territory ownership, I would shift it towards like much larger scale. And so you start to shift into things like when I think of like ESO battle, when you think of things like world versus world, like bigger.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think that they directly overlap. They're both MMORPGs, sure. But New World's already proven that it doesn't have any interest in becoming a subscription-based model. And so if Lord of the Rings goes the same direction and ends up being this kind of like optional battle pass type method, and because it's all under one team, you could very much see a day where they say like, Amazon Prime members pay $20 and get both seasons or some crap like that. So I don't see how it hurts them, especially because, as you've noted, like I'm not entirely confident that Amazon sees New World as having to make money quarter over quarter, because New World has other value to Amazon besides being a source of money. Amazon does always make money. They're never in the business of just like, oh, we just want to make people happy. They're always making money, but they're not always making money on the surface. Like it's not always about, they see the big game, they see the long game. And so they're willing to lose money over here and not over here. And at no point are they going to go, we got to stop that. It's like, no, the whole process is making money. Let's just leave it alone. As opposed to somebody who, once they get to where they're making profit overall, they go in and they start squeezing every last dime out.
Get every little penny.
And it's like, no, they're
and you feel that
loss leaders as loss leaders.
Yeah. So for New World, in my perspective, this means that New World's going to benefit even more. So obviously they've been growing the team. And one of the misconceptions about game development is that you just want to throw more people at the thing. Oh, go add 100 people to this team. Problem is that causes a lot more management, a lot more meetings, a lot more slowdown, because moving more people into different directions ends up being kind of a key place. And that's a leadership problem. I think New World's leadership team has really been delivering, and they really take those lessons and they apply those lessons, and then they learn from those lessons, and then they rinse and repeat. And it's unfortunate that they've had to learn so many public lessons, because that does set this zeitgeist in this narrative that people like look at and say, hey, they had a problem 2 years ago. Well, they did, and that means the game's bad. Well, they fixed the problem. Oh, okay. Well, I'm still angry. Like you have to overcome some of these things. But in terms of this, when based off this announcement alone, with the Azoth engine that they are currently on, and that they are announcing they're making massive investments into this engine, I think you're going to see New World really start to open up new systems. And I think that's going to be kind of starting to be more apparent with the expansion announcement that we're probably going to get next month at Summer Games Fest, where they start to finally show off the trailer, start showing off the information and details about what we were to expect, because you want to start that new hype cycle building through season 2 into this fall. Now, in the short term of it, I don't think you're going to see like an immediate impact for season 2, which drops this summer. I think the expansion will actually start to be kind of a sign of it, but it's really about the next expansion after that, in terms of the design and its development. And so what this means is that the Amazon continues to say that they're all in on New World and they're all in on gaming. They continue to actually do those. So these aren't just hollowed out words. They're continuing to invest money, put people in, and also work within this team. So that imagine you as a developer, right? Like this is the model that we talked about with Yoshi P. You as a developer, you know what? You've been on New World for a while. You're kind of not feeling like, hey, yeah, kind of doing this thing. Oh man, I'd like to go check out what this team's doing. It gives you the ability as a developer to flex and do different things. But all of a sudden, you're immediately an asset. They can bring in new developers as they're kind of like they're trying ground out on the New World team over the course of the next several years and have them advance into doing different projects and more, all without having to do massive amounts of retraining, HR, and so much more. So it's just more internal teams building out using the same kind of tool set. So that's going to be, I think, a massive advantage. And that's going to benefit both Lord of the Rings and New World, so that like as those games continue to go on, if they decide to support New World after year 10, then I think, no matter what, that's after year 10, I think is the question of, is this game profitable enough for us? Do we still see the value in it, whether being a loss leader or just being a continued thing that we want to keep putting money into? That will be, that's a bigger conversation for us in 2030 to have at that point.
Yeah, I think you're looking a lot at what allows that redundancy. It's why when you see like proprietary engines and stuff, there's like a little bit of an alarm bell there, because you've made it very hard to hire people. You've made it very hard to train people. One of the advantages of something that has multiple franchises under it is something like Blizzard. Like they make great cutscenes. No one of those games employs enough cutscenes that they could justify the team that they have. So like, I do believe that some of the art direction and stuff there is able to be used across that. And so if you have things that you can use across multiple teams, that allows that to be better. Assuming it's under good culture, because what we've also seen in recent years is that if a company has bad culture, that bad culture spreads just as quickly. And so as long as like Amazon Studios is a nice, like healthy place to work, then like spread it across as many IPs as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. That's great. I don't know. I don't see it as anything bad. I also don't see it as anything that there's going to be any reason to talk about it anytime soon. Unless
they all of a sudden start dropping trailers. But the best thing in this case is them just to get to work. And like, and honestly, as more information becomes solid, we'll be sure to talk about it. But if you guys have any questions and anything we can clarify, be sure to sound off in the comments below. Hit that like button, and hopefully we'll see you guys in these live shows, which we film on Mondays and Tuesdays.